Hello everyone, Chief Meteorologist Matt Holiner here. Well, if you live in the Midwest, you were impacted by that storm system that moved through Friday into Saturday. And what a storm system it was. So I want to spend a little bit of time recapping it, talking about why it happened, and also looking at how exceptional of an event it really was. Let's start with an overview of this thing, because look at all of the storm reports Friday into Saturday. Yeah, that's a lot. Really, two stories of this storm system. The first being the snow that fell from Utah, Colorado, on up into Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin. There were a few places that saw 18, 19, even 20 inches of snow. That alone would have been a big story. But what became the bigger story was a severe weather outbreak that occurred to the south. From Texas, across Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, a lot of reports of damaging straight line winds, in some places up to 80 miles per hour, some reports of hail, and then the big story, the reports of the tornadoes in Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and into Kentucky. And notice that cluster of reports from Arkansas into Kentucky. That could have been one tornado on the ground for an extended amount of time. The Weather Service is looking into that to see if that actually occurred. If so, a truly exceptional event. The longest track tornado in history went for 219 miles. And if you look at a rough estimate of how long that track is, it comes in around 200 miles. We don't know for sure yet if it was on the ground continuously throughout that stretch, but this one could rival and possibly break. If that holds, the previous record, it could break that record of 219 miles. That's something that is going to be very interesting. Of course, we've seen the terrible pictures that have come out of there, of the devastation and unfortunately the rising death toll coming out of Kentucky as well. It looks like it was a very intense tornado that moved through, but pretty exceptional to be talking about tornadoes even in Illinois. So what caused this severe weather outbreak? Why tornadoes in December? Because you usually don't think of December being the month for tornadoes, and it's true, it is rare, but let me explain why it happened. What we had was a strong low pressure system, and that's what's represented by these black lines on this map. These are pressure lines, and notice the center of that low pressure system. This is at 10 o'clock Friday night, by the way. This is the surface map at 10 o'clock Friday night. The center of that low pressure system was right on the Illinois-Iowa border. So we had the low pressure system, which was the trigger to trigger the storms to occur, and it was a strong one. That's why it was so windy as the system in general was moving across the Midwest. But because of that location of the low pressure system, we always talk about how the location is so important. Based on that location at 10 o'clock, it was bringing all that warm, humid air up from the Gulf of Mexico. Temperatures and humidity that were well above normal for this time of year in Kentucky and Illinois, where we had those tornadoes, and Missouri as well. Notice that we're looking at temperatures at 10 o'clock on a Friday night in December, 60 to 70 degrees. That's not where we should be on a Friday night in December. And the two things I want to draw your attention to here are what the temperatures were, so in that 67 degree range, and also the surface winds. Notice that right here, Kentucky and Illinois, out of the south, if not the southeast, and pretty weak. Now we're going to jump ahead to 18,000 feet up in the atmosphere. And notice when we look at those wind barbs, notice there are a lot more barbs now because the winds were much stronger. And notice that the direction has changed. That shows us that there was wind shear in the atmosphere. Wind shear is when the direction of the winds and the speed of the winds changes with height. So from the surface up to 18,000 feet, the winds were picking up with height. They were also shifting. That causes rotation in the atmosphere. That's what can trigger tornadoes. The other thing that allows for that rising action and what can create severe storms is instability. And instability is a measure of the difference in temperatures at the surface versus temperatures aloft. So if you look at these red lines that represent the temperatures up at 18,000 feet, -12, -14 degrees Celsius, which if you're wondering in Fahrenheit, that's about 9 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're talking about close to a 60-degree difference in temperatures at the surface versus 18,000 feet up. That was our instability. We had our wind shear, and the reason why we had the wind shear is these are the wind speeds that are represented. The colors represent the wind speeds up at 18,000 feet. That's the jet stream that was working over Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri at the time. That dip in the jet stream, you can see that trough is what we call that dip in the jet stream. The jet stream was coming around those really high winds aloft in a different direction than those weaker winds at the surface, and in a different direction. That is a classic severe weather setup. And unfortunately, it happened, yes, in December. So how rare are December tornadoes? Well, of all the months, when you look at our record of tornadoes in the U.S., of all the months, we've had tornadoes in every month. This isn't the first time there have been tornadoes in December. But of all the months, December is the least likely to have tornadoes. The fewest number of tornadoes have occurred in December. Just barely. Notice January comes in as a close second, but the fewest number of tornadoes do occur in the month of December. However, there is a little bit of a change. When you look at our record from 1950 through 2020, looking at the number of December tornadoes, the average number, 24. But if you look at the history, notice how there's been an uptick, how we've had in more recent years, since 2000, more months that have come in above that average of 24. And there are a couple reasons for that. One, the radar technology has improved. There are more storm chasers out there, so we are able to know about tornadoes that occurred in pretty rural areas that we weren't when we go back to like 1950s and 1960s. So that contributes to it. But we think that also what's playing a role is that December has gotten warmer since 1950. The winter season in general is our fastest warming season. With more warmer temperatures, more humidity, it's more likely that you're going to have tornado outbreaks. Now, was this the biggest tornado outbreak we've ever seen in December? No. Actually, that would go to 2002. In 2002, December 2002, we had 98 tornadoes. Right now, I mean, it's still early in the month, we're only sitting at about 40 tornadoes for the month of December for 2021. So we're going to have a lot more tornadoes later this month in order to beat that. So that's not really what made this exceptional. We have had tornado outbreaks in December in the past, though tornado outbreaks in December are the least likely to occur. December, it is pretty rare, but it has happened before. But really what stood out to me, which makes this event more exceptional, is where the tornadoes occurred. Usually, when we have tornadoes in December, it's down south in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. It's much less common for them to occur in Illinois and Kentucky, particularly Kentucky. That's why this is garnering so headlines and why this is seems to be such a rare event. And Kentucky's never experienced this before, because Kentucky, especially in December, has not had many tornadoes. But what's interesting to note is that we've been seeing a shift over time. When you look at all tornadoes, going back to about 1980 and comparing to how many we're seeing now, there has been a shift east and north in where we're seeing the tornadoes. The greatest increase in the number of tornadoes has actually been occurring in Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois. And we think climate change is playing a role here too. We're finding drier conditions out west, places like Nebraska, Kansas, traditional tornado alley. They're getting drier. And so not as many storms, therefore not as many tornadoes. And we're also seeing warmer temperatures spread farther north. So that combination is shifting maybe Tornado Alley a little bit to the north and east. That's something that we think climate change is playing a role. So tornadoes are becoming more common in Illinois and Kentucky, when traditionally they're a little bit more common to the south and west. Now, what also makes this an exceptional event is the high number of fatalities. Again, we don't know the final number yet, but it's looking like it's going to be around 100 or even more. And that by far easily breaks the record for the most fatalities for the month of December from tornadoes. Previously, the biggest death toll from tornadoes in December was 49 back in 1953. So we're easily going to smash that, and that's what makes this such a sad event. So why were there so many fatalities in 2021 when the technology is a whole lot better than it was back in the 1950s? Why was the death toll so high here, making this the deadliest December tornado outbreak? Well, I think there are a couple factors for that. A big one is that it occurred at night. On a Friday night, during the holiday season, when people are distracted, they're not thinking about tornadoes. At night, some people were already asleep at the time these tornadoes occurred in Kentucky. And people just aren't in that mindset in December to be thinking about severe weather and being prepared for it. So that played a role. The timing here was a big role, but also the strength of this tornado that occurred in Kentucky. That's what really stands out, to have such a strong tornado in December. Usually when you get these big tornadoes, that's when our peak of our tornado season. We're talking about April, May, June. That's typically when the EF4, EF5 tornadoes, and it's possible that this one could have been an EF4 tornado. They usually occur during those warmer months. Look at December. In December, when we've had tornadoes, again, not a whole lot of them, but they've typically been EF0, EF1 tornadoes. There have been lots of those. But in December, for EF4, EF5 tornadoes, there have only been 12 EF4 tornadoes and only 2 EF5 tornadoes in December. So assuming, we don't know yet for sure, but assuming this was EF4 tornado that went through Kentucky, it would only be the 13th that's occurred. And I also want you to pay attention to this change that's about to occur. Look at EF4 and EF5 tornadoes. Okay, there haven't been very many, right? But look at the fatalities that have occurred in December. Of all the December fatalities, not counting the ones that just occurred, 44 were caused by those 12 EF4 tornadoes, 39 by those 2 EF5 tornadoes. Meanwhile, there were hundreds of EF0, EF1 tornadoes, and they only caused 10 deaths. So usually those weak tornadoes, very easy to survive as long as you're indoors, because typically you're only going to get a little bit of roof damage. It's not going to tear your house apart. An EF4, EF5 tornado, even if you're doing all the right things in theory, going to that lowest level of your home in an interior room, sometimes that's still not enough. And the only way you can survive is if you have a basement, and especially in Kentucky, a lot of folks don't have a basement. So a truly exceptional event, a truly sad event, but I hate to leave it on a sad note. The good news is things are looking a lot quieter now for the rest of the weekend, and really through the middle part of the work week, we get another frontal system Wednesday and Thursday. And the other thing to look forward to is some warmer temperatures. It's going to get quite warm, temperatures well above normal before the next cold front comes in Wednesday and Thursday. So that's some good news. But of course, we know that it is going to get stormy again. There will be severe weather again. But you can count on us to bring you the very latest the next time severe weather threatens. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.